Hey guys, welcome back to the Ghost and Friends YouTube channel. We are here tonight to talk all things SEC with the good friends Jon, Joy, and Coach Chris Hayes. How's everybody doing tonight?
Doing great.
Fantastic. Could not be better. Excited to be amongst fabulous company. I'm honored to be here, be in the presence of you three. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jon nailed it. I don't need to say anything else.
I was about to say, that's a pleasantry that I've never heard, I don't think, from
Jon
him.
held up that
Coach,
verb.
they talked about how they're going to come after me tonight on this podcast, so I'm starting by sucking up immediately.
There you go. There you go.
You made me feel like I really underdid the intro there, to be honest with you, man. Like, you brought the heat right there. And once again, Evan is chiming in, wanting to know how much you gentlemen are paying for these guest appearances here. Thanks for being here, Evan. Everybody else tuning in, whether it be on Twitter, X, whatever you call it, or YouTube, thanks for being here. Throw a quick like on the video for these guys. Another big weekend in the SEC. I know that we are still newcomers in this conference, and so for you guys, some of these matchups, and maybe not for Oklahoma really, but some of these matchups are a little bit new, and to me, they're all new. They're all very exciting. I care a little bit more this year about Georgia Ole Miss than I would in the past. And I love college football just the same, but now it directly affects, my team and what happens with my team. Thank you for being here, Mr. Mike Maddox. But let's talk about some of these games. So first and foremost, we're gonna save some of the bigger games for last, Jon. Sorry about that, buddy. No. We gotta get your Bulldogs in here, let them pour their drinks and fill out the chat. So we're going to start Oklahoma and Missouri. And the only reason that I'm even bringing this game up, really, to be honest with you. Go ahead, Jon.
Yeah, we're starting at the bottom of the bottom. So, yeah, thank you for clarifying. It only goes up from here. Yeah.
We're starting in the basement of hell.
To be honest, I talk a lot of Oklahoma football. I'm a bit winded in doing so, but the Twitter beef for me, that is why this game is on the docket for this evening. The Twitter rivalry to me is going to be more fun to watch than the actual product put out on the field in Columbia come Saturday. Do y'all have a preference on this? Do you want the new guys to come in and beat up on what appears to be a pretty overrated Missouri team, or do you want Missouri to show the newcomers a thing or two about November life in the SEC?
Go, Jon.
Yeah, please go first. I've talked the entire time. Go, please, somebody say something.
We just started.
3 minutes in.
I think I'm pulling for Mizzou in this one, which earlier this season you would have never seen me saying that. I was really over how overrated they were. They got humbled pretty quickly, and we've seen them get humbled the rest of the season. I said it. I think, Ghost, I might have said this a couple of days ago when I was on your show. I've heard more chirping. I heard more chirping in the offseason from Oklahoma fans about how they belonged here, about how they were going to own this space and they were going to own this conference and they were going to make this theirs and we should all be terrified. And Evan, I'm sure he'll be a spaz at some point and you'll see him. His tail's right there. But I think that I still am not over seeing Oklahoma lose. I'm just not over it. You came in so cocky, so arrogant, with such pride, and watching you get humbled week after week has been enjoyable. We've seen Missouri get humbled really since they joined the SEC. They made the SEC championship one time, but until last year, we weren't really thinking about them. And so Oklahoma, I'm glad that you are getting your reckoning early. You have earned it. Welcome to our beautiful conference.
I will say that watching Oklahoma never gets old, and considering their success in the Big 12, this is a nice change of pace, I'll say. What about you, Coach, Jon, whoever wants it?
I feel like, when you look at Oklahoma coming in, I mean, it's like they're like a one-legged person coming to an ass-kicking contest. They just can't do it. I mean, I don't really think they're going to have the ability to beat Missouri, even if I wanted them to. So, Missouri is just going to be that team that underperformed this year, obviously very overrated in how they performed this year. Luther Burden, what a waste of talent out there not being utilized. He's going to still be high in NFL draft stock, but just what a waste of talent sitting out there and, Is it Columbia? Columbus? I can't remember what the actual name of Missouri is.
Columbia.
It's Columbia. It's like, okay, gotcha. Thanks, John. But, it's just one of those things that I just don't see how Oklahoma is going to beat Missouri. I just think it's like I said, one leg come to an ass-kicking contest just ain't going to work. So you're going to see Missouri probably win this game, and I wouldn't be unhappy with that.
It's really odd. A lot of people, and I wouldn't say odd, I think we're all calling it accurately. Joy said it, Coach has said it, I've screamed it. Missouri is overrated. They're still 6-2 somehow. They just have been very, very fortunate with their schedule, survived the Vanderbilt experience there in overtime.
Mm-hmm.
John, what about you? Do you have a preference in this game?
I could not care less about either of these teams. If I had to choose, I would like to see Missouri win, and it kind of goes to Joy's point, but it's also just for me. I do think, I think Missouri. I like it when Missouri has hope because there's just going to be a train wreck at the end of the season, and so. Just keep building a little bit, 7-2, 8-2. You're like knocking on the door of like the college football playoff, and then it all comes crashing down. So, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit petty when it comes to Mizzou and Texas A&M as well, and now Oklahoma and Texas. I'm a SEC old school SEC purist.
Petty all the time.
Well, okay. To be fair, I'm generally petty. If it's not my team, I'm pretty petty. But I do think, that being said, I'll go out and say it. I think Oklahoma's going to win the football game. I would like to see Mizzou win, but I think Oklahoma, this is the type of game that Brent Venables and his defensive mind, especially with the challenges that Mizzou has had on offense, is the kind of game that he figures something out, and they score just enough points to win. So that's my take.
Yeah, I was going to ask for a prediction from you three. I feel like we got John's there. I'm also going to take Oklahoma to win this game. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, Coach. To me, I question how much fight Missouri really has left in them, just because of the way games are going. They've won 6 games, but, it's pretty much played a JV schedule there in the beginning. I think Boston College was the most difficult non-con opponent for them. But it's just been sloppy all year. The offense has never looked the way he wanted it to. A lot of penalties with the offensive line. Couldn't protect Brady Cook. I don't think he plays this weekend. But yeah, Joy, Coach, give me your predictions. John and I, we're rolling with the Sooners.
Yeah, I'm with John. I just, as much as I would love for Missouri to win this game, I just don't think they can. I don't think they're healthy enough. They have not shown me enough promise or enough ability. The crappy thing is I think that when they're healthy, they have the talent to win this game, but they're not healthy, and they haven't played to be the best version of themselves this year. So unfortunately, I have to take that dang school in Norman, Oklahoma.
Doesn't feel good.
I'm going to go back to the Tony Franklin days with Auburn and call it a 3-2 ball game. We're going to say 3. Let's go with Missouri 3 and Oklahoma 2. And we'll just call it like that back in the day.
I'm glad somebody picked Mizzou. Mizzou.
Someone had to do it.
Yeah. Otherwise, Mizzou was definitely winning the football game.
I flipped the coin.
I'm emotionally hedging a little bit because if Oklahoma does win, they do reach bowl eligibility. But I get to say I'm right if they win, and if they lose, they're not beating Alabama or LSU to finish the season off. Therefore, they're staring a 5-7 season in the face. So, thank you, Coach. We can't have a full panel sweep. You know what kind of voodoo that does. But I just think, like you said, John, it's a time for Venables to kind of, step up, showcase his game. I think that defense will be riled up to play against a Caden Green transfer on that Missouri offensive line. There's a lot of animosity, you could say, between even players. And then, of course, that leaked out onto the Twitter fan base with the Twitter timeline going pretty crazy. Evan mentioned it earlier. Shout out, Evan. It's not just the SEC schools, coaches, players that are going through it right now. The fans, too. It's November in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Evan, I don't remember what you said the official injury prognosis was, but I hope you get better soon, my guy.
It's a torn. I have inside sources tell me it's a potentially torn ACL for Evan.
Yeah, it's his knee.
Yeah, okay. Lower body injury. So he's doubtful for the game.
Well, with modern day medicine, recovery, recoup, PT, all that stuff, there's no reason, Evan, you can't be standing on the sidelines come next, late August, early September for the Dogs. So get back out there, buddy. Keep with it. I really do hate to hear that, though. Like that stinks. Hate it for you. And at the beginning of the year, if you would have told the two fan bases of the schools that we just talked about with Oklahoma and Missouri, if you would have been like, oh, now we've talked about your game, time to talk about a game that means a lot more than your game means, Vanderbilt and South Carolina.
South Carolina
would have been a little bit of a slap in the face to those two teams, but true words have never been spoken. This game's got a lot more meaning to it, even though both of these teams are going to be playing a bowl game. Neither team really have a shot to get into the SEC title game. I guess with a miracle, South Carolina could dance around it. But yeah, thoughts on South Carolina, Vanderbilt? I think a pretty fair point spread has been placed on this game. 4.5, I think, is the line. Now I think it's jumped up from 3.5 to 4.5 over the last 24 hours. What are your thoughts? Vanderbilt at South Carolina, or is it South Carolina at Vanderbilt?
It's at Vanderbilt.
Okay. I mean, it's not like it matters. So, but
yeah, I got called out last time because I really thought Auburn would take care of Vanderbilt being in Jordan here, but obviously Vanderbilt, as John said, he's already won there with New Mexico State. He took care of business there with Vanderbilt as well. So kudos to him and shout out to him on that call out. But, being at Vanderbilt, I really do think you're going to see South Carolina's defense show up again. Vanderbilt's going to have a really hard time. That's going to be the beauty of this game, honestly, to tell you the truth, is to see what their offense is going to be doing in their short mid game against South Carolina. Can they get the ball off? Is South Carolina going to cause havoc to the point where he doesn't have the ability to do all the reads he'd like to do? So it's really going to be a difference of those two schemes going down. I think South Carolina takes care of business at Vanderbilt.
I struggled with this game. I think South Carolina has like some insane win streak against Vanderbilt right now, and everyone that I've heard has just said, like, history tells me that South Carolina wins this game. History also tells me that Vanderbilt is a trash team that no one ever considers on their schedule, and that has proven to not be the case this season. I'm going to pull for Diego Pavia. He's proved everyone wrong this season, and Vanderbilt has proved everyone wrong this season. So I'm going to go out on the limb. I will do it. I will take Vanderbilt. I think that, if you can beat, like, at the end of the day, like, this South Carolina defense is good, but you showed up for a home game and played what was at the time the number one team in the country and won that game. And, like, you didn't bat an eye when you did it. So Diego Pavia and this Vanderbilt team are not scared of South Carolina. They're not worried. They're not afraid. Clark Leaves showed me he can pull a good game plan together. So history is made to be broken, and I think Vanderbilt does it this weekend. I'm taking the Doors for sure.
I like it.
Yeah, I like that pick. I this is going to come down to Lenora Sellers, right? It's going to come down to South Carolina's defense is definitely good enough to slow down Diego Pavia, even though he has, he's shown, like, he's played against Alabama's defense, against Texas defense, like he's shown that he can actually score. But I do feel like South Carolina's defense is very similar in some ways, the way it's built, the way their athletes are built, to Auburn's defense. And there wasn't, like, Vanderbilt won the game, but Diego Pavia didn't go out there and ball out the entire game. So I think it's going to come down to Lenora Sellers, and I do think he's going to have enough to win the football game. I think South Carolina will win it, just because I think Lenora Sellers will be able to use his legs. He'll be able to do a lot of what he did against Texas A&M against the Vanderbilt defense, and I think South Carolina's defense is just good enough to stop Diego Pavia, one or two stops that they'll need to stop him to win the football game.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. I think that, as you mentioned, the fronts, that's what probably decides this game. Vanderbilt's front, talking about their front seven on defense, like that, they look so good against A&M there. At times, they gave up a big second quarter, but it's hard for me to think that Vanderbilt can score enough to hang with them if South Carolina and Lenora Sellers don't turn the football over. Vanderbilt will probably make them work, a little bit harder than A&M did, as far as not giving up big plays and making them go the length of the field. But the only way for me that I can see Vanderbilt hanging around is they probably win the turnover battle by maybe even, 2 turnovers or more. I think that they'll struggle to score offensively, and then Lenore's Rocket Sanders. They run the ball like they did in the second half of that A&M game. It's going to be really, really hard on Vandy. But with that being said, I'd love to see Vanderbilt continue to stock some wins or pile wins up and build that momentum. It's a fun story to root for. So,
don't you find it ironic that you're looking at Vandy this year and not looking at them like we just did with Missouri? And with, we're looking at Vandy and actually trying to comp and say, okay, there are ways that they can win this ball game, and they are competing every week. That's something that's just cool for college football, honestly, to tell you the truth.
No, absolutely, and that's part of why it needs to keep going.
Mhm.
I'd love to see them parlay the success into even a few more wins, hopefully a bowl win down the line. And that's not being said as somebody that's just going to have like a ton of SEC pride. No disrespect to you guys. Not going to be rooting for any and all SEC teams as they get out there in the bowl season. Just not really. I talked about it for too long. I can't really hop on the wagon now. So moving forward, Joy probably cares about this game a little bit more than us other three. I don't know
exactly which game we're going to.
Pretty big game there, Joy. You've already talked about it a little on this channel. Going to ask you to talk about it a little more. How we feeling later in the week as the Crimson Tide get ready to head into Death Valley?
I mean, I still feel pretty similar to how I felt earlier this week. I'm still tied up. We got some positive news at the receiver position today, but I mean, my concerns are still the exact same. Nothing's going to change until the first snap of the ball. We have to get our running game going. Like it's going to have to be like pretty much the top priority, and Nuss has to be smart and play smart ball. We made a very controversial decision today to bring a live tiger to the game that apparently has really caused an uproar. It's almost like people forgot that we did that for, decades before they were born, but it's fine. And so I'm still looking forward to it. Still very nervous. I'm still taking one for the team. I was offered a majority of tickets. I think at this point I've counted at 6 tickets. I've said no to every single ticket because I've never watched LSU and Alabama in person and watched LSU win. And I don't want to start now. So I'll let the Tigers take the dub and not attend any day of the week. And so, yeah, I mean, same concerns, still feel about the same. Always will lean towards the Tigers when it's a Saturday night in Death Valley. They love Alabama fans are loving right now to say like, well, we beat them in Death Valley. And I'm like, no, Nick Saban beat us in Death Valley. And Kalen DeBoer has struggled at Vanderbilt and at Tennessee this year. And so has the Alabama Crimson Tide. So, I mean, good luck.
Ghost, I said the same thing about Georgia. Nick Saban, Kirby doesn't have an Alabama problem. He has a Nick Saban problem. And then they were up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. So,
John,
just be careful about the Nick Saban problem. What I will say,
you had them at home. We have
that's
them.
True. That's a great point. We didn't have Death Valley at night.
Lounge with a good take. Lounge in the comments with a good take.
Lounge. Man, somebody mark the time, the date and time. Lounge has a good take. I will say, Alabama, they have had the benefit after they played Georgia and they lost to Vanderbilt and they struggled with South Carolina. They had the benefit of Brady Cook with Mizzou. They've been in a situation where it's just felt like that they've had enough breaks go their way to win the games that they've won since they lost to Vanderbilt. And it hasn't been a situation, even with Mizzou, I'll say even with Alabama winning 34-0, it is, I mean, when Mizzou is not, number one, Mizzou is bad, but number two, when you're playing without Brady Cook, you're even worse. And so they lost at Tennessee, they lost to Vanderbilt, Mizzou lost Brady Cook, and South Carolina, I mean, if South Carolina makes 2 more plays, we're potentially looking at Alabama riding maybe a 4-game losing streak. Like, I know they beat Mizzou 34-0, but like if that's a healthy Mizzou team with Brady Cook and Luther Burden's cooking and all that stuff, like that might be a different game too. So I don't think Alabama has the horses based off of 3 of the last 4 games, and 3.5 of the last 5 games, because the second half of Georgia put up 290 yards of offense on them in the fourth quarter and should have won the football game. So all of that, I think it's a similar situation. We'll talk about, I know Ole Miss and Georgia, but everybody's like high on Lane Kiffin because of Ole Miss finally scored points last week. Well, it's like, I mean, shit, yeah, it was Arkansas, and at some point they were going to score points. At some point, Alabama was going to win a game 34-0, but that doesn't negate the second half versus Georgia, and then the 3 games where they lost to Vanderbilt, they almost lost to South Carolina, they lost to Tennessee. So I think LSU is going to win the football game, and I think LSU. I do think it'll be a dogfight. This game always is. It'll be a fist fight. It's going to be close. I don't think LSU goes out there and blows them out, but I do think LSU is going to win the football game.
Those are some good thoughts, but my feelings preseason was I thought that Bama would actually have a 4-loss season this year, and they've been darn near close to doing that, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to get their 3rd loss on Saturday as well, because LSU playing at home in Death Valley, those things working together for them.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I agree with Joy, Nussmeier, he has got to stay on his game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we can't have like he had in the half against Texas A&M. I know all LSU fans want to see the Nussmeier. They've been seeing the consistency out of him and breaking those zones and breaking those man-to-man. Who is the wide receiver, Joy, that y'all got back that you were talking about being a
CJ Daniels?
All right. That's key too. And that to me is something that's very important. And this ain't your daddy's Bama team anymore. I really do think they lose in LSU Baton Rouge. I just think that's just the way it fits, the night game in LSU. And I know that that's not been the case over the few years, as far as where they're at and where Bama's been, but this is just a different team, different year. There's just different things I'm seeing, and it all kind of comes in precursors from what John said. And I just think that it's going to be I think an LSU win. It's probably going to be a battle, but I do think you're looking at a 7 to 10 point ball game in favor of LSU on Saturday.
Joy,
you don't have to say your prediction. I already know what it is, so we don't need to say it. So we don't have to have the same call.
We can avoid the voodoo. I will just say this: I don't see enough in the Alabama secondary to cause a ton of issues for Nuss. He will be looking to rebound after a miserable second half in College Station. Now, LSU, can they stop the run game? Can they stop another mobile quarterback? They've been sitting around for 2 weeks is my thoughts. They've been getting ready for this, ready to prove that second half last week was fluky, and that's not who they are. Because, they made Marcel Reed look impeccable. And then A&M travels to Columbia, South Carolina, and we all saw how that played out. So I give LSU a really, really good shot here. I'm not going to drop my actual prediction because, like Joy said, most have already seen it. Welcome back to the channel, Mr. Mac. We just talked good about your Sooners, man. 3 of the 4 of us had you guys winning. So, but hey, if that's your actual prediction, it is what it is. Thanks for being back is my point. That's true. John gets blamed for everything.
Any chance that Lounge has to shift the blame to someone else?
Lounge is deflecting because he's the king of the jinxes. So
can I address all the Mike G comments for just like a second? If you don't mind, I'm going to be very kind and polite. But here's the thing about Alabama fans. LSU's the underdog at home. I'm okay with that. We play better that way. Number 2, Bama is pissed and LSU's going to get it. All I've heard from Alabama fans is how confident they are after they have beat the dog crap out of Missouri. Like, every Alabama fan that I've spoken to is like, well, we're coming off this big win. And I'm like, I would, at this point in time, prefer being LSU coming off of a big loss. Like, LSU has everything to prove. And from the sounds of it, your program feels like you're back because you just beat Missouri. At some point earlier in the chat, he said, we beat Georgia and you didn't. Well, one, we haven't had the opportunity. We didn't play them. They're not on our schedule. But secondly, at some point, you have to stop riding a first half victory over Georgia. Like, at some point, you've got to stop riding it. You did not beat Georgia in the second half of that game. If Georgia has a couple more minutes, Georgia curb stomps the crap out of you. If Ryan Williams doesn't have a miracle catch, Georgia wins that ball game. Mm-hmm. Alabama fans were absolutely terrified at the end of that game. And how convenient that now that Georgia is number 3 in the college football playoff rankings, that's what you're hanging your hat on when a week later, y'all were in the cemetery begging Nick Saban to rise from the dead after you lost to Vanderbilt. Like, I've had it with, like, you're either the Alabama of old or you're not, but pick a lane. Like, y'all are riding into the sunset now because you shut out Missouri, but a couple weeks ago you were crying because you lost to Mandy. Like, I need y'all to decide as a fan base what you're going to do. You're either sad that Saban's gone and you're acknowledging that you're not as good as you once were, or you're pretending like you're still the team that played in the first half of the Alabama-Georgia game. Pick a lane, but I need a lane. We're crying out loud.
Ghost, you're going to have to figure out how to, like, do a call-in show because we need Mike and Joy. Like, we need, like, We need
in
this.
the works. So
I'm
that
not allowed
needs
to
it.
be like this on the Speakeasy Sports Show.
Perfect. Mike, we're going to get it set up here within the next week. You can call in. We can have a nice, fun talk about your Tide, but it will be after Saturday's game versus LSU. So a lot more of the story will be told.
And can we also talk about, this Tiger on the sideline that Joy talked about, Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports, he tweeted that LSU used to have a tiger that they kept in a cage outside the visitors' locker room, and they would feed it raw steaks so that when the visiting team came out, there would be a tiger there with like blood all over.
Can you imagine a wide receiver that has an NIL deal to get his nails painted, what he would react to walking out to seeing a live tiger eating a raw steak?
And he got
that's the difference in our programs. Our wide receiver gets penalized for pretending to shoot somebody, and your wide receiver.
Alabama,
the color of the team that you lost to the week after.
I couldn't imagine being a fan of a team where my best player, when we lose to one of our biggest rivals, he goes out and gets his nails painted the color of the rap that goes and gets his nails painted orange. Like Ryan Williams, they lost to Tennessee. The dude went out and got his nails painted Tennessee orange. Like, what in the world are we even doing here?
Maybe he lost a wager with a DB, from the second quarter of the game.
I hope, because it was his girl that posted it on TikTok or wherever people saw it. So I hope he lost a bet. Somebody.
It was a great look for him.
Mike, something I want to add to what you're talking about over there, because that's what I typically see out of Bama fans when you start getting people that kind of get in their grill and start spitting truth, is that you want to go back to your past and throw all your records up there of what you've done. This isn't the same Bama team that we've watched for the last decade. We have a different team playing this year. That is the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they are a completely different dynamic. So you've got to quit living off this, what we have done, what our all-time schedule is, all these things. You lost to Vandy this year. You've got to accept a lot of those things that come into play, and this isn't the same team. Go ahead, John.
Two losses before November, and it should have been 4. You should have lost to Georgia. You should have lost to South Carolina. You lost to Vanderbilt. You lost to Tennessee.
Yep. So
luckily you got Mizzou on the schedule to make yourself feel good about yourself. But
it's Nick Saban's history. Like, it's Nick Saban's history. What you accuse LSU fans of? Well, y'all are still writing off 2019. Like, y'all are still doing what Ed Orgeron's. Like, y'all are doing the same thing now. Like, just own it. It's a new era. That's okay. Like, it's okay. You're not a bad football team, but you're not what you were. And just you just got to acknowledge that.
Ghost,
welcome. That's the hard part of it, man. I went through it as a Texas fan in 2010. We went 5-7 after winning as many games in the 2000s as any other program that wasn't Oklahoma. But it's hard. It's hard to accept. And these guys were the kings of the castle for such a very, very long time. And oh man,
even if you wanted to say like that about my team, like you have two Georgia fans here who their program has been just as dominant as yours. And
I am not jealous of Alabama. If you told me right now, I could trade places with Alabama. Hell.
Okay, now I really know.
Kirby Smart's trajectory is this. Kalen DeBoer is about to lose to LSU. He's about to not make the college football playoff. It's just going to be
guys. Now we can just stop, because now we just know the kind of fan he is. Like, if you think Brian Kelly's getting fired in 1 or even 2 years, you're just unaware of reality, and that's okay. Just go worship your Saban statue, and just leave it at that.
Oh man, I get it though. Sark made the playoffs last year, and I was wanting to put up a Sarkisian statue. That's just what happens when we're in the mud for a long time. And Saban did bring those guys out of the mud pretty well there in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, but the difference is Texas is going to make the college football playoff again this year, and Alabama is not. So Sark is going to have 2 years in a row, and Alabama is going to be sitting at home. And it won't be the first. It won't be the first time. It'll be the second time in the last 3 years that they'll be sitting at home.
Yep.
Yeah. Because 2022, they didn't make it either. So, Nick Saban, those last years of Nick Saban, you're lucky that Kirby Smart has whatever block he has with Alabama, because if he didn't have that, then you would have had a loss in the SEC championship game last year, and then you would have had a loss with Kalen DeBoer this year. But Kirby Smart, I mean, you can beat Kirby Smart. Congratulations. You can beat Kirby Smart. That is something to hang your hat on because you're the only one that can do it right now, but you can beat Kirby. So,
and this undisciplined Alabama team that y'all are all griping about these are Nick Saban's players. Like, that's the part of Alabama that no one wants to acknowledge. Like, this is not a Kalen DeBoer recruited team. Like, these are Nick Saban's players. So we don't have a Les Miles statue. We never have. We never will. But if that's and I've never pretended to worship one. And when he got fired, we celebrated. We didn't cry. So
Ghost, I love that you tweeted earlier about trying to get me riled up, and all you had to do was talk about LSU and Alabama to get Joy go.
I didn't say anything.
She is fired. I love it.
Ghost can confirm. I was on your show earlier this week, and I was not like this.
Very true.
I was fine. I'm fine until you just want to ride your history and not be aware of the reality of your current program. Like, if someone came in here with just like straight facts and said, like, we have struggled against Vanderbilt and Tennessee, we haven't been great on the road, we should have lost the Alabama Georgia game. Like, these are all factual statements. If you can be aware of reality, zero issue. It's the wanting to ride our history, but then all of a sudden pretending that a win over Missouri matters, as if a Nick Saban Alabama program would have ever hung their hat on a win over Missouri. If that doesn't show you how far Alabama's program's fallen, then you're not paying attention.
Yep.
I will say this, Mike. We will have no Ed O slander here. Okay. I don't know why. I love the guy, and 2019 LSU would have beaten any of the national championship teams that came out of anywhere. I mean, they're one of the greatest college football teams of all time. We'll call it, Mike. We'll set it up next week. I promise. I've been working on this, and we'll do a call-in show. You can come in here and share your opinion. You
don't need a call-in show. You're voicing your opinion just fine right now.
True. Joy's gonna hit him with the Ed O what roll tide expletive. One of the greatest videos of all time. I will say that. I love that guy. I also with the rest of these guys agree LSU has a really good shot defending home field, which the home teams have done well in this rivalry lately. And so, Joy, good luck to your Tigers, and should be a fun one. I'm very excited for that game. Texas plays host to Florida this weekend. I expect Texas to handle Florida very well. I do not think DJ Lagway will play. I think it is just wanting Coach Sarkisian and defensive coordinator Coach PK to prepare for both players, giving his guys the best chance possible. But I'm going to attribute some of the beatdown that Texas gives Florida to what the Dogs did to Florida through 4 quarters. Played a close game. We talked about this, John. I told you I wanted a lot of overtimes and a long game. Hey, you gave us a close game. You gave us a very physical battle. And because of that, Texas having a bye week, I think Texas rolls Florida. But I'm the guy wearing the burnt orange Texas shirt saying that. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Florida, their secret weapon was that backup quarterback from Yale, that preferred walk-on. Who tied it up with Georgia. That was their secret weapon, and they revealed the secret weapon for Texas. So because they've shown their hand with their elite backup preferred walk-on from Yale who scored on Georgia, I think Texas will be prepared. Otherwise, I think it may have been if Billy Napier had the preferred walk-on from Yale and it's still in the bag, Texas might be in trouble. But because he had to play him, I think Texas is going to be fine. So, but just watch out. I mean, that Warner kid scored on Georgia. That's all I'm saying. Just be careful.
He did.
John's riding that because I said that on our show earlier this week. I was like, where's the Georgia defense? And John hasn't let it go since.
Yeah. Well, because I've been thinking, where is the Georgia defense? That's why I haven't let it go.
Yeah, no, I don't see Texas struggling in this game. Scott Strickland was very strategic today in what he did in terms of setting this Florida team at ease. I have my own thoughts and opinions on the statement that Strickland put, but my always conspiracy theory hat to the side. It won't do enough for this Florida team to be able to compete against Texas. I just Florida's not healthy. They're going to continue to struggle. Napier will come in with a game plan. I just think Texas will out-talent them, honestly. Like, that's just what it'll come down to. They just don't have enough in their arsenal to be able to compete. So I think Texas game pretty easily.
Peace.
I'm curious. DJ Lagway, was he really hurt? Did he call his number just to say and act like something's wrong, and then all of a sudden he's possibly playing this week? He's probable. So it really kind of bugs me what he honestly did in our game. But playing in Texas, I think that you're just going to see a rested Texas team that's ready to take on a pretty battered Florida team. And they probably exhausted a lot of resources in wanting to beat us. They've got to travel. I just don't see them having the ability. They're going to play you hard probably for a quarter and a half, but I just see Texas pulling away as the game progresses. I want to see Ewers obviously execute like you do. I want to see him come out and have a solid game, and I think he does. And I see Texas winning by more than 2 touchdowns at home.
Vegas would agree with you there, my friend. What about you, Mr. John?
Yeah, I do think Texas is going to win this game big. I think it'll be 10+. I do think the Florida defense, I think they figured some stuff out in recent games. I do think that Florida, it's an SEC school. I've talked about this on your show when I was on previously. It's like you're playing SEC teams, man. Like these are SEC athletes. I don't care. We've seen it from Vanderbilt. Like you've seen every team in the SEC raise up and have a game. Even in 2022, when Georgia went 15-0 and won a national championship 65-7, Mizzou had them on the ropes deep into the fourth quarter. When you have SEC teams and you have SEC athletes, anything can happen. And I do think Florida they have good athletes. They have good football players on the defensive side of the ball. I just think Texas. I mostly think with the quarterback situation, whether DJ Lagway plays or not. I know he was listed officially as questionable. on the SEC injury report, which questionable is like one level better than doubtful. So it's like out, doubtful, questionable, probable. So he wasn't in doubtful. So I don't know if that's Billy Napier playing games, like if how hurt he really is. But either way, I don't think Florida's offense can get enough going against Texas' defensive front. And I don't care what happened in the Florida-Georgia game, the Georgia-Florida game. Sorry, I said it incorrectly. I don't know what happened in the Georgia-Florida game. I don't care what happened. That Florida was never going to score enough points to beat Georgia, and I don't think they're going to score enough points to beat Texas. I got Texas.
Yeah, I hope you guys are all right. To me, it definitely feels like some gamesmanship from Billy Napier. If DJ now, but there's layers to that, because if DJ really is hurt, I understand, trying to get Texas to prepare for multiple quarterbacks, multiple schemes. But also, if Napier, we're talking about the central vote of confidence, so it's given out regarding Billy Napier today from AD Strickland. I don't buy that. I think it's a load of crap. I don't believe any word of it. I think Napier is gone. I think that if he had a Lagway who is somewhat banged up but may be able to play, he'll take his shot, trying to prove, hey, I still have life. I can still beat a big team. Now, with that being said, Texas's defense has been very good this year. We've turned everybody over. The last 2 games, I think we've picked off 5 passes in the last 2 games with Georgia and Vanderbilt. I see turnovers for the Texas defense. I don't see a sloppy Texas coming out of the bye. We have a lot of maybe it's just as a fan. Maybe I'm just hoping. But I think we address and clean up a lot of the penalty issues with the offensive line, and then we see Quinn play effective. He was good against Vanderbilt. Quinn played great against Vanderbilt, in my opinion. He had 2 deflected passes for turnovers, got sacked a lot of times, and the Twitter fingers were quick to blame Quinn for every single issue that went wrong with the offense in the second half against Vanderbilt. All right, Mike, we're letting you in there if that's okay. Joy, do you want the question?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
What you got, Mike? Let us have it when you're ready, man. Take your time. But yeah, I'm with you. I think, like you said, John, Florida's defense has some nice pieces. They've done some good things. They seem to still be really, really bought in on that side of the ball. But offensively, I think we make life pretty difficult. I think that we win the field position battle often and take care of them. So I'm not afraid of any voodoo on the clean panel sweep when it comes to Florida this weekend. I really hope I don't eat those words.
No, you're good.
No, you'll be completely fine.
But John, Chris, either of you care to comment? And Joy, if you'd want to go further with your your tinfoil hat, please do. But do y'all have a comment regarding the vote of confidence given out by Strickland today?
I'll go first. I don't believe it either. Like, he didn't mention Joy. We were texting about this earlier, and Joy was the one who actually brought it up. So I don't want to steal Joy's thunder, but he didn't mention in his statement that Billy Napier would be back in 2025. He didn't mention next season. He didn't mention any of that. Like, if you read his statement, it was very much it read as a vote of confidence for like this week. You know what I mean? It was like, I wanted to let you know that Billy Napier will continue as head football coach of the Florida Gators. I mean, that can mean like I'm not going to fire him this week. Like, it doesn't mean anything, because when you look at, he talks about Florida's commitment to excellence. He talks about he's confident Billy will meet challenges and opportunities ahead. He's confident about, he mentions all these things, but he says, I call on Gator Nation to continue standing behind Billy and his dedicated team while we work to build a championship program. But he doesn't mention timelines. He doesn't mention dates. He doesn't mention any of that. He just says he'll continue on as head football coach. And I think for me, when I read that, it's recruiting. I think it's transfer portal. Like, you're coming up on the toughest part of Florida's schedule. It started last week with Georgia. It's going to continue with Texas. It's LSU. Like, it's going to be tough until they get to Florida State. And I think seeing that, like, Scott Strickland knows, we're probably about to lose a few games in a row, and the fan base is going to spiral, and players are going to think about transfer portal, and recruits are going to start doubting. And so I got to say something out here that's going to try to keep this thing together for at least keep those things together. The players not transferring, the recruits, still showing up to games and wanting to commit to Florida. But I think at the end of the year, especially, I mean, God forbid, if he loses to Florida State, he's done. But even if he beats Florida State, I just don't see a path forward for Billy Napier next year. But when you're going to have coaches out there that Florida can go get, can afford, can make it, and would be interested in coming to Florida.
I'm going to add to what John said, but I'm going to let Joy answer this question first.
Yeah. First of all, Mike, I saw your question the first time you asked it. I'm not going to interrupt John while he's talking. So just to be clear, if Alabama and DeBoer, I'll read it out loud so everyone can see. If Alabama and DeBoer is so bad in his first year, then why is third-year Kelly an underdog at home? Okay, let's stop acting like we're a 14-point underdog. Okay, I think it's currently like 3.5. And it's a pretty simple answer. Your last loss is to 7th-ranked Tennessee, and our last loss is to 14th-ranked A&M. Like that's why it is the way that it is. You lost to a team on the road that is currently ranked higher than the team we lost to on the road. It's just not that difficult to comprehend or understand. It doesn't have anything to do with who our head coaches are. It has everything to do with who both of our last losses are to. So I don't know how many times you need to put third-year Kelly. I am an LSU fan. I worked at LSU in LSU football recruiting. I am so aware of who our coach is, how long he's been there. If you feel the need to mansplain something to me, I'm not the girl. I just explained to you why the line is the way that it is. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Mike, I would be willing to bet that Joy could even almost impersonate all the different Brian Kelly accents that, he's showing off down there.
Absolutely.
He'll probably do it better than he can, honestly. He's actually from there.
Well played.
Joy, I'm digging your takes. Good stuff there. What I feel like you've got is you're trying to create stability, like John said. When he hit on the NIL from the recruiting standpoint, going back to that point, I think that's what he's looking at. But he's trying to basically, the way I look at that letter is like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. I mean, it's going down. It's just one of those things where I think he's trying to put a formality out there to show some kind of unification. And like I said, it's stacking the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. It's going down regardless. I think that's something that's very soft. People are trying to inference that, hey, he's going to be back next year. I still think he could easily be as fired. Like you said, if he loses to Florida State, they may fire him on the field. Like they did Herm Edwards at Arizona State, and do that to him. So I think that's something that you got to look forward to, that he's not going to be your head coach next year for the Florida Gators. I think that's strictly for everything else besides the football program, to keep recruits committed, to not have any of those flips and those kind of things that happening. But he's not going to be there next year.
Very well
It's
said.
actually really wild if you look at it because they don't have that many commits. Like they have the number 51 recruiting class in the country, and they only have 11 commits. Like they're hanging on for dear life at this point. I'm not so sure it wasn't also to keep DJ Lagway from entering the transfer portal. Like I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I'll just say what it is. I mean, he's the highest rated quarterback recruit they've had since he's higher ranked than Tebow was. Like he's a phenomenal quarterback, and I think they know that. And the thing about Napier is that he hasn't lost the locker room. So if Strickland can put out this public statement saying like, "Hey guys, we're still behind him," then the locker room's like, "Oh, this is still our guy." Right. And the idea of entering the transfer portal also kind of falls to the back burner because you're still thinking this is going to be your coach. Is it manipulative? Yes. Is it sketchy? Yes. Do I expect much different from Scott Strickland? No. It's just, but to think that Florida's doing anything but scheming a way to get back to competing for national championships is childish. Like they are a program that plans every single year on competing for national championships. Like this is not a program that we're not talking about Ole Miss here. They're not thankful to be talking about being in playoff contention. They're not thankful for a good bowl game. They want to be competing for a national championship year in and year out. Because much like Alabama, they love to look at their history. So they are doing that. And if you think anyone in their athletic department or any booster of theirs is saying Billy Napier's the guy to get us there, you're not paying any attention.
I'll just, since it is hate Ole Miss week for a couple of you gentlemen in here, I will bring up the fact that Ole Miss's best season in school history ended in a non-playoff rotation Cotton Bowl loss to Texas Tech back in 2008. Funny stat there, just for those lounge. I hope you're around for that one, buddy. Matt, good friend right here, checking in. Why make the change from Napier if you know you got to run that schedule back next year under a first-year head coach? I think you have to ask yourself, put the shoe on the other foot. You want to run it back with Napier again, and then the chance of losing out on some of the players on your roster via the transfer portal. It feels like everything is hanging on by a thread there to me. Joy, you mentioned it, keeping DJ Lagway around. There are a lot of people that think that those two are tied together, at least for the moment. And so I would be willing to bet anything in the world, very similar to what your school did, Mr. Ralston, with Jimbo Fisher in 2017 after losing, after you guys lost with the UCLA game in dramatic fashion. Everybody knew that Kevin Sumlin was out. Everybody knew A&M was probably doing a lot of back channeling, looking for a coach. It might have just started a little earlier than most people assumed. But I would bet Florida has honed in on a handful of names to really, really go after, because you know how agents are, and these coaches probably know that Florida is waiting to contact them maybe after the season or whenever they deem their season to be over. And so a tough spot. I think it was a crock, to be honest, what coach or what their athletic director, Mr. Strickland, did today. I think he's out almost regardless of what happens to end the year here, unless he, went on some miracle streak. But to me, it feels like the decision has been made. So I agree with all of you.
What I'll add to that for Matthew is that I also think, why would you make the change? Because you hire a coach who can leverage the transfer portal, who knows how to leverage NIL resources, who knows how to build a roster, who knows how to get you to a better place than Billy Napier might have you next year. Like, I think there is, when you look around college football, if you look at Kalen DeBoer is a good example of this, what he did at Washington. It's like there are guys who know Mike Norvell, even though it went off the rails completely, but what he did at Florida State last year with the transfer portal, there are guys who know how to use the transfer portal. There are guys who know how to leverage those resources. And if your recruiting class is in the tank and you don't have high caliber transfer guys wanting to come to your football program, like, I think you have to figure out, how do you inspire some belief in the way that you do that, even if the schedule is going to be equally as tough next year. You're going to run it back. You go find a guy who can leverage the portal. Like that
will be their best decision of any decision they make. As much as I hate Florida, I hate it. If I was in a head coaching position, if you look at the talent pool that's in the state of Florida, if you look at how enriched it is, and obviously their history, why would you not? I think head coaching position would be one of the most coveted head coaching positions, in the Southeast, possibly the United States, from anybody out there that's looking to promote their career. But it comes down to, like you said, they need to have those attributes set in play from someone who's got some experience in that, because that's going to be their key to as they try to transcend and move away from Billy Napier going forward.
Yeah. You know what's going to scare the hell out of me, Coach, as a fellow Gator hater, is when they go and hire Kurt Signetti from Indiana.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy who can build a roster, go out and just play joyless murder ball. Kurt Signetti is just beating the brakes off everybody. And he beat the brakes off everybody at James Madison too. And he he spent 3 years under Nick Saban in Alabama. Like, he's a guy that, I think you got to go after those kind of guys.
Right. I was just about to say that you need to find somebody that's got a pedigree that that's not even on our radar, that we think about at times when it's, highlighted in spots, but something like that, like you're talking about with him up in Indiana.
That's the type of guy. And that's what I'm scared. And I don't know if Scott Strickland, I don't know if he's a good enough AD to hire that kind of caliber guy, but that's what Florida needs. Like, you need a guy who's hungry, who believes in himself and his system, who has a little bit of swagger and a little bit of, like, no pun intended with FU for Florida, but has a little bit of FU like in built inside of him, because Billy Napier has none of that. And I like Billy Napier. I think Billy Napier he seems to be a very quality human being. He seems to be a very wonderful, family man, a very like even keel kind of guy. Yeah. But if you're gonna win at Florida, I mean, the last guy who won at Florida was, well, I guess Dan Mullen, if you count that COVID year, but he didn't win much outside of that. The last guy who really won at Florida was Will Muschamp in that 1 year where he won the SEC East. He went 11-1, and it was because he was just like, F y'all, man. Like, he just came in with like all of his swagger, and I think, like, you got to find somebody like that.
I'll say one last thing, because I know the Napier family very well. His dad was a head coach up in Northwest Georgia. I coached against him, and I've sat in the room with Coach Napier when I went to Alabama for a coaching clinic. I watched him on the board. He knows ball, obviously, because of where he's at. But sometimes being a good coach of X's and O's does not mean that you're going to be a good head coach for a football program. I've seen guys be great OCs and be great DCs, but be terrible as a head coach. They just don't know how to be that CEO compartment that they need to have, and that's probably what Billy's dealing with. Great coach, great guy, great family, and like I said, working with him, seeing his actual, what he does in the clinics, but yet just not be a very good head coach, and just that takes time to realize, unfortunately.
I also think he probably, like, certain coaches have ceilings. I don't think we talk about that enough in this sport. Right. Like, we're always like, well, they've won everywhere they've been. Okay, well, then they get to like the best of the best, and then they can't compete, and then we're like, well, what happened? Like, there are certain guys that just can't compete in the SEC. Yeah. And I think the jump from the Sun Belt Conference to the SEC was such a large one. And, like, no one really – I think everyone was like, well, he's winning in the Sun Belt. I'm like, at Louisiana Lafayette. As a Louisiana girl, I know the level of competition he was playing against at Louisiana Lafayette. Like, that wasn't difficult. Not to mention that Louisiana – like, the talent that oozes out of that state – is insane, and kids want to stay there. They want to play there. So, like, the UL Lafayette is the school that all the kids that want to go to LSU but weren't recruited by LSU go to, and then hope one day they get to transfer there. Like, it's a feeder school. Right. If that's what heard me say that, they'd murder me. But it is what it is. And Napier was successful there, but being successful there does not equate to being successful.
No, Napier's whole thing though is he just Florida got caught up in the work for
the pedigree of Nick Saban.
2022. Yeah. Like, that was it. And I think Billy Napier's agent used like the LSU like smoke to push Florida to hire him, to make a decision, like just all kinds of things. But it was all, he worked for Nick Saban. That was period. He
went to the Nick Saban School of Coaching.
That was it.
But so did a lot of guys that aren't talked about. Like, we talk about the Kirbys and the Sarkisians, but there's how many coaches are on Alabama's rosters that we never talk about? Like,
all of them. Mike Locksley doesn't seem to be lighting it up.
Yeah, I mean, like,
he won national championships at Alabama as an offensive coordinator.
Nailed it. Like, just because you worked under him doesn't mean you're the next him. And, like, we've got to come to terms with that.
But that goes in parallels to what you said, Joy. He hit a ceiling when he, coming from the Sun Belt to the SEC, and he was one of those.
It's not to say he couldn't be good in the ACC. It's not to say he couldn't be good. This is, as much as everyone wants to hate it and goes, you're seeing it now. Oklahoma is seeing it now. Like, as much as everyone wants to not agree when you don't play in it, it is the upper echelon of college football. And if you can coach here, you can coach anywhere. But just because you can coach anywhere doesn't mean you can coach here. Like if you, it's a different breed.
Yep.
No, I think that's very well said. And, you know, he was a hot commodity, obviously, coming out of Lafayette. I thought Florida was making a pretty good hire when they made the hire. But to imagine it continuing on for another year would be really, really shocking. I think that, like you said, looking up, you know, at a Coach Sig or a little further into it, everybody just wants to make the splash hire. They want the best name available. There's always the one veteran coach, you know, who hasn't worked out somewhere. And they're like, you know, this has got to be him. You know, he's made 3 stops in the last 9 years, but he'll work it out for us here. But yeah, selfishly, I hope Napier stays. I don't want Lagway to transfer. Texas A&M finished runner-up in his recruitment, and that's just how, you know, a little insight into how my twisted mind works. That's the first thought I'll have is, oh shit, DJ could transfer to A&M, and if the firing were to go down. But we'll see what happens with Florida. Glad to have them in town this weekend. I'm a big alligator guy, okay? I love alligators. Matt could vouch for me. I used to have 2 American alligators myself down here in middle of Texas as pets. Bought them illegally, raised them to be about 3.5 feet. It became pretty dangerous. So those guys, you know, and then I had my first child, so I had to get rid of them. But I've always liked the Florida Gators. I agree with you, though. They do need a little more attitude, you know, than just feels like Florida teams to me all should have a little more attitude. Now, there's a fine line between having attitude and then going out and doing what some of the Urban Meyer teams were doing off the field. Big difference there. But, yeah, Florida, I mean, they're great.
Attitude and murder, they're not exactly. Let's define between the two.
Yeah, and so somewhere in there, you know, let's find a healthy balance in there. But yeah, so let's move on. We got one more game to talk about here. Someone mentioned transfer portal shortly ago, and so speaking of transfer portal, that Lane Kiffin's music right there. And so, John, Chris, we'll go with you guys first. Dogs, Sanford Stadium. It's going to be a scene, right? I would hope so. Big game.
It's going to be in Oxford. It's Vaught Hemingway. It's Vaught Hemingway. It's in Oxford.
Are you serious right now?
Yes.
Man, I gotta get more sleep.
No, Tennessee next
Grove.
week is Sanford.
Oh, okay, that's what I saw. That's where I'm at. Y'all have a night game.
Yeah, everybody Georgia fans got excited this week because
it was
Tennessee was announced.
You did that. Yeah, that's what it was. Your tweet did that.
Tennessee was announced as a night game, and we all lost our minds and we all got excited.
Yeah.
But I thought, wait a second. I thought you said we were going to talk about the big game of the week. I thought we were talking about Mississippi State and Tennessee. There's no bigger game than Mississippi State.
Welcome to my life, Ghost. Welcome to my life.
I mean, because Georgia, we know Georgia's losing to Ole Miss. Like, this is just not Lane Kiffin. He scored. Did you see how many points Ole Miss scored last week? Did you see that?
Almost.
Did you see Lane Kiffin? What's that?
I said almost as many as they scored against Furman or whoever it was early in the year.
Yeah, they put up 70 against Furman, I think. They put 63 points. Are you kidding me?
There he is.
I mean, why is Georgia even going to this game? Like, why is Georgia even going to this game? We should talk about Mississippi State at Tennessee. Skip this game. No, I'm kidding. I will say,
you have 70 points being scored, John. That's probably how much Tennessee is going to put on Mississippi State.
Yes.
Harsh.
Yeah, I think this is Tennessee's tune-up before Georgia next week. No, Coach. First of all, if you're listening to the show right now and you haven't subscribed to this show, subscribe to the show, like the show, do our boy Ghost a favor. He does really good work. And also, I mean, Coach Hayes at Coach Hayes Huddle, like he does film breakdowns throughout the week. And he has broken down a lot of Georgia Ole Miss stuff. So if you're into that, like go check that out. And he can give you like the X's and O's about this, because I'm not going to give you X's and O's. I'm just going to give you that Lane Kiffin is a clown. Like Lane Kiffin is an absolute clown show. Lane Kiffin, these are the games. Do y'all remember? It was only a couple of years ago. Or was it? It was, I guess it was a couple of years ago, maybe. When Lane Kiffin did at Alabama, he did like get your popcorn ready and like the whole thing. And he spent all week like talking all this stuff and whatever, and went out there and his freaking offense scored 10 points against Alabama. Yep. Last year, all I heard last year was Jackson Dart, Quinshon Judkins, this Ole Miss offense, they're going to challenge Georgia, blah, blah. Kirby Smart beat Lane Kiffin 52-17 last year. Lane Kiffin does nothing but tweet and put out a freaking injury report where he puts the whole damn football team on an injury report like it's a joke. And then he shows up, and in these games, he lays a freaking egg. And this year, he laid an egg versus Kentucky. He at LSU, I talked about this on the Speakeasy Sports Show. At LSU, they go into LSU, and it is a tough place to play for sure. But they commit 12 penalties for 110 yards. Like, it's just symptomatic of a football team that is not disciplined, that doesn't have a disciplined head coach, that has a guy who plays games, who last week, the worst thing that could have happened for Lane Kiffin is for his team to go out and light up the scoreboard and score 63 points last week. You know why? Because he put everything on film for Kirby Smart and his elite defensive staff to sit there and pull it all down and pick it all apart. He would have been better going out there and winning that game 24-20 and keeping everything in the bag and then coming out and unloading the barrel on Georgia this week. He would have been – that's what Kalen DeBoer did. Like, Kalen DeBoer showed nothing. They played Georgia. All of a sudden, he just started showing all this crap that Alabama – like, that no one had seen from Alabama. Went up 28-0. Then Kirby Smart made adjustments. They figured out Alabama almost lost the football game, and then they haven't looked the same since. And that's what Lane Kiffin did last week. He went out and he just like did his Lane Kiffin thing where he's going to, run up a score and show off in a game that means nothing at the detriment of the game that means something this week. And so I think Georgia, because I Coach can talk maybe more about this. I don't have unwavering belief in Carson Beck right now. And so I'm not saying that Georgia's going to come out and light Ole Miss up. This very well could be like I forgot what show I was on. It very well could be like Georgia, Texas. It could very well be like Georgia, Texas, where it is, it's Carson Beck is not playing his best, but Ole Miss can't do anything because the Georgia defense just shows up in a mood and has enough on film to shut this team down. So I think Georgia is going to win the game by double digits. I don't think Ole Miss is going to score more than, they might. I'm gonna put them maybe at 24. But I don't see Ole Miss scoring more than 20 or 24 points against this Georgia defense. And I think people are saying the same thing about Ole Miss that they're saying about Alabama. Did you see what they did in their last game? Did you see what blah, blah, blah? And I'm just telling you, man, like Lane Kiffin, he did his normal clown show. He went out and he showed off in a game that means nothing. And it's going to cost him this game this week because he put it all on film and Kirby Smart was just salivating. He's like, thank you, God, that because their offense looked putrid. And then all of a sudden he went out and put up 63 points and showed off. And now Kirby Smart has had that all week to get his team ready.
So how do I follow that up? That's some interesting tidbits of information, but all true, honestly. I think that you've got Lane Kiffin being the troll of every. Have you ever seen an injury report being basically a trolled situation? Everything that he does to me just puts more spotlight to him than what he should be focusing on, which is getting his team prepared and ready to play in a big time ball game. You can pad stats all you want against wannabes, but when it comes down to it, when you play good defense, you're getting your butts, it's being stalled. My thing is defensively, I feel good where we're at right now. Offensively, I would really like to see Carson Beck come out and just execute a little bit better, cut down on the mistakes. I do think that we're going to defensively take care of their offensive side of the ball, which I don't think is being talked about as much. They're wanting to talk more about Lane's, renegade, transfer portal defensive guys. And honestly, when you're playing a team like this, like they're playing, you want your big guys to show up, and Trey Harris is still doubtful. I don't know, as wide receiver, he's one of the top premier. I think he's top 3 in receptions in the SEC, I believe, and he's doubtful to play on Saturday. I don't know if he does or not. It'll be 2 weeks in a row because he didn't play against Arkansas. Of course, they went out and still won to much my demise when I said that they wouldn't play well without him out there. But like I said, it was Arkansas. Needless to say, defense is going to show up. We're going to have some good things that holds. I think it's like a 17 burger point that they're going to probably score. It'll probably be early. But once we figure out what we want to do, I see us winning something like 35-17, 37-17. I think it's just under 3 touchdowns. But offensively, it's all about how we execute. If we don't execute, we're going to be in a battle in Oxford for a while and then finally pull away. But if we come out executing, what I would love to see finally for the first time in my life is us come out in the first quarter and play just very disciplined football. Let Carson be a game manager, establish a little bit of a running game, get him in a rhythm, and see us score a couple of touchdowns over 2 quarters and not have any turnovers. That would be all. And even if it is 14-10, 14-7, I'll take that. Versus being down 14-0, we're not moving the football with 2 turnovers and looking somebody in the eye going, what in the hell are we doing? That's what I felt like we were against Florida. So I would really love to see him come out and execute in the first half, get him in a rhythm, get him start feeling well, get a good running game going. You put him in a rhythm and the way our defense is playing, it's going to be a good night for the Bulldogs on Saturday. I say something like 31, 34, 30. Let's do this. 35-14 is what I'll say.
All right. Joy, I'm sure you talked a little about this game.
Before Joy goes in, let me give a score prediction real quick. Because I'm gonna go. Hey, have you guys seen Georgia's running back Cash Jones? Man, cash money. I'm riding with cash money. I think it's gonna be a 32-17 game. He wears number 32. Go ahead and make your bets for Georgia to cover the spread. Cash money, Cash Jones. That's what I'm going with.
Earlier this week, John and I talked about this game, and I gave John every reason why Georgia wasn't going to win this game because John needs to hear why Georgia's not going to win a game. This is the most confident I've ever heard John talk about Georgia, just so we're clear.
Because it's Lane Kiffin, who is an absolute clown show, who has never won a big game. Tell me the big game that Lane Kiffin has ever won.
Let me finish talking, John. John is usually like texting me and he's like, we're going to lose by 100. And he's always devastated 3 minutes into the game. And I'm like, John, my school's playing too. Shut up and leave me alone. But with that being said, I think this comes down to literally 4 words that I'll say until he retires probably. And that's in Kirby, I trust. I just like in my mind, Kirby's now the guy that you just don't bet against. And I'll be honest, I was at the Georgia-Florida game, and I wanted to punch half the Georgia fans I was around in the face because the things that they were yelling and saying at Kirby, not at Carson. If you want to yell at Carson for throwing interceptions, yell at him. I don't care. But yelling at Kirby, I'm like, if y'all don't want him, I'll take him. I'll take him. My school will take him any day of the week, and so will any other school in the country, including the Alabama that think they wouldn't. He is the best coach in college football. Like, this is not up for debate. This is not up for discussion. He has proven time and time again that he is more than capable of beating any team that he comes into contact with. And John did just nail it, even though he cut me off when he said it. Lane Kiffin cannot win a big game. Like, he cannot do it. And if for no other reason, I would even say this. It's not a talent situation. It's not that you don't have the talent. It's 100% that you are not capable of out-coaching Kirby Smart. Like, you are just not capable of doing it. I don't know any other way to put it. And here's the deal. Lane Kiffin's at the perfect job for him. Like, Ole Miss is going to let him be a troll. They're going to let him put every name on the injury report. They're going to let him post whatever the heck he wants to post on Twitter. They're going to let him do whatever he wants to do, and they're going to be okay with it because they're not a national championship contending program. They never have been, and as long as he's at the helm, they never will be. This will be Georgia by a lot. Ole Miss fans will be excited for the first 15 minutes. And then most of their fans' dads will probably text him and tell them that, they're out of money in their bank accounts and they can't go to the library tonight. And they'll leave devastated and depressed and go get drunk in the Grove. I will say Georgia for $1 million, Team Daddy's money for negative 17 points.
I will say, though, I love the for a big game atmosphere at Ole Miss. I do really like it. I like they do things really well. It is a little bit of a wine and cheese, definitely a wine and cheese crowd. Tailgates, they got chandeliers in their tent, their tailgate tents, stuff like that. But it is a very good experience for tailgating and for game day. And for my Ole Miss fans, my Ole Miss friends, when I go at Lane Kiffin, I love all of you. You need to get rid of it. You need to let Lane Kiffin go to Florida. You need to stop defending Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, the reason Ole Miss keeps Lane Kiffin is because Lane Kiffin has built the Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin has people talking about Ole Miss. Whether they win or not is irrelevant to them. People talk about Ole Miss. People tweet about Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin is on TV. The Ole Miss logo is out there. That's why Ole Miss keeps Lane Kiffin. They don't keep Lane Kiffin for football. And if you have any kind of innate belief in Lane Kiffin, you're going to continue to be disappointed. Because even – Nick Saban said, I will never forget this as long as I live. Nick Saban sat on a college game day desk before this season and said, Ole Miss finally looks like an SEC team in the trenches. They finally look like a team that can compete in the trenches. I mean, Nick Saban said this, right? And Nick Saban, I mean, he knows, right? He knows better than anybody. He said this, and when Joy says it's not a talent issue, they're right, because you have the greatest coach of all time saying, you finally got what you were missing. So this should be your college football playoff season. And then you go out and you lose to one of the worst Kentucky teams in the last 5 years. Because that's Lane Kiffin. That's what he does. And so I love my Ole Miss friends. I love all of you. I hate your team when they're on the schedule. It is what it is. But Lane Kiffin, man, y'all got to let go of Lane Kiffin.
And Lane Kiffin doesn't care about y'all. He doesn't care about Ole Miss.
No.
Lane Kiffin cares about Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin has one priority, and it's himself. He's going to do whatever he can to make himself look good, whatever puts him on a pedestal, whatever. He's glad people are talking about Ole Miss, but you're talking about Ole Miss because you're talking about Lane. He just wants to be talked about. That's who he is. I completely agree with John. We have a ton of Ole Miss friends, love them all. And it's unfortunate for them because they're going to continue to get their hopes up, and he's going to continue to let them down.
I want to segue between what both of y'all said from what Joy said from the fact of give me Coach Smart. I definitely would take Coach Smart. Listening to him this afternoon at practice, got a little vibe from a video today on that where Ole Miss is having a hot dog party for their spring game in April. We've still got a coach that's out there getting after ass on Monday, literally not letting up on those guys whatsoever, calling them out. You can hear names being hollered. That's the head coach that I want, getting after it. And that's something that's very special for me. So right now, Joy, I am very, very thankful for us having Coach Smart with us, no doubt.
Well,
I wish he would leave. I'm not going to lie to you, Coach Hayes. I wish he'd leave, but I'm going to trust him as long as he's there.
Similar feelings over here, but you all seem to feel very, very strongly in regard to Georgia, Ole Miss. I know that all of our relationships, friendships have just started to develop a little bit. Probably still learning a few things out about me and vice versa. And with that being said, I stand for Lane Kiffin.
Yes, you do.
I love Lane Kiffin. I have reasons for this, okay? I think his offense is a little bit gimmicky. I think he is a James Franklin of the SEC, inability to win a big game.
I love that comparison.
Perfect.
That's a good one.
But keep going,
and they're the Dallas Cowboys of college football.
He's on a roll. Let's go.
He attacked Jimbo. He went after Jimbo after the 2022 recruiting class, the highest rated class in college football history. It wasn't just Lane Kiffin. Saban had comments too, but then Jimbo called Kiffin a clown. Kiffin beats A&M at Kyle Field, and then goes on in the post-game press conference on the field and was like, he made a reference to being called a clown. He is a clown, okay? He's my clown, all right? That's my guy. He's my bozo. He's my whatever, Pennywise, whatever. That's my guy. I do not think that they can beat Georgia, but nobody thinks that they can beat Georgia. And I do not see enough out of Carson Beck, and I see enough in the Ole Miss run defense to think that this game could be pretty damn good. I really do. I predicted Ole Miss 27, Georgia 26.
That's what I need to hear.
Evan said he was going to fight me with torn ACL or not, I believe, which bring it on. If we're ever going to box, I prefer it be while you're down on one leg. But I don't know, just something weird in the air, just a weird feeling. It on paper looks like Georgia should pummel Ole Miss a little bit, beat them down. But the inability to run the football, the letting the third string quarterback walk on Mr. Yell himself score a touchdown on you guys last weekend for the Florida Gators. I don't know. I'm just not ruling it out. I would not put a single dollar of my actual money on this game. Not a chance. Not on either side.
Yeah.
But I am taking Ole Miss. I am taking the Rebs. I'm taking a result that would benefit my Longhorns just a little bit. Okay. So
John did say, I will give away that John did text earlier yesterday maybe, and said that this does feel like one of those weeks where like some games that like everyone's calling to be normal are going to be abnormal. Like we talked about South Carolina, Vanderbilt. It's kind of why I went Vanderbilt, because like everyone's leaning South Carolina. We're talking Missouri, Oklahoma. Like it does feel like one of those weeks. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen in the big games, but it does feel like a week where some team there's always some kind of chaos in November. We feel like the whole season's been chaos, but there always seems like November rolls around and there always seems like something happens that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, but we know what's going to happen, Joy.
John's about to say that Georgia's going to lose by 14 points.
Yeah. And the big upset is going to be college football playoff national championship contender Alabama is going to lose to little old LSU. Like we know, like that's the chaos that's going to happen. Number 11.
I'm going to let John say that, even though it was kind of just a diss because he just said
number 11. Like that's the big upset of the week is going to be LSU over Alabama, because Georgia. I mean, Ghost just told us like Georgia, Ole Miss over Georgia is not. I mean. It's not going to be an upset.
I disagree. Mississippi State's going to beat Tennessee.
That honestly would make me so happy. I don't know how you lose the bye week, but if A&M could somehow lose the bye week this week, I'd love to figure that out.
I think there is some chaos. It does feel like one of those weeks. I just don't, and I understand where you're coming from, Ghost, and anything is possible. Anything is possible in college football, especially this season. I just don't. These are the games that, like I said, until somebody without that little script A beats Kirby Smart, and I just don't believe that Lane Kiffin is that guy. I think there are coaches that can do it, but I just think what's going to happen is Kirby Smart's going to come out there. Georgia's defense is going to be nasty. They're going to be stifling Jackson Dart and that Ole Miss offense, and then it's going to get in Lane Kiffin's head, and he's going to start doing things that are totally like outside of the box and calling all kinds of weird stuff, and they're not going to be able to execute on it, and it's just going to snowball, because that's what happened last year. It's like came out, Ole Miss was playing kind of decent, and then Kirby Smart made adjustments, started stifling that offense, and then Lane Kiffin just tried to get cute and started turning the ball over, and it just snowballed on him very quickly.
Speaking of getting cute, is it going to be like – where does it rank on your scummy meter when Trey Harris ends up suiting up on Saturday and playing for the Rebels? Posted as doubtful. I don't buy anything that Lane.
Hell, half the team is posted as doubtful. You're right. Yeah, I think it's just like what we're talking about. It's possible, and if it happens, it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, my favorite was, so they just released. Actually, while we were talking, I just saw a notification come up. I clicked over on it. They released updated. So, they release injury reports and they update them, right? So they released the one yesterday. It had half, basically the entire team as questionable or doubtful. It had the Watkins kid who caught over 200 yards and 5 touchdowns last week. They had him listed as doubtful. And it's like, what in the world happened to this kid to go from catching 5 touchdowns and over 200 yards to being doubtful to like maybe not even playing the game? Well, they upgraded him to questionable now. So I think it's like I think Lane Kiffin is just like moving, they've updated the injury report and he's like moving guys from like they were doubtful, now they're questionable. My guess is maybe like Saturday morning they're going to be probable. Who knows?
Probable. Mm-hmm.
But it feels like he's moving guys around.
He's doing like you see the videos like which team wins, and it'll be a dog like on the staircase, like shooting a basketball into the baskets or whatever the team. He's doing that with his injury report. He's literally lining up every single player, letting Juice Wells go through, and I don't know, it's goofy, man. He is a clown. Nothing that any of the three of you said about him were incorrect, for what it's worth.
No.
I like him for being a clown. I would never want him to be the head coach at my university, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
But we've
fun
all
to-
got to have our entertainment, you know. And I do think like one thing that I appreciate about Lane Kiffin genuinely is anybody who can live their life where they're just trolling and making jokes about anything that they can, and you're in that like position, you're in the public eye, and you're just like comfortable enough just being that guy. I do have a little bit of respect for that, where it's just like, oh yeah, you're like when you see the injury report come out and he has half the freaking football team on the injury report, you do have to chuckle and be like, yeah, that's
he embraces it, no doubt.
Yeah,
I want to see what his over under is going to be on fourth down plays. How many he goes for?
all of them.
Probably so. But you know what? I agree with Joy's lamenting there. What we were talking about, the one thing I feel like she said that hit the nail on the head completely is what I feel from Lane Kiffin based off what I saw with him at USC, at Tennessee, obviously at Alabama as those see, and now here at Ole Miss, is I really do think he cares a little bit more about himself than he really does about his programs, and it shows and it's evident by how he carries himself in his day-to-day, work days.
I believe he is the highest paid state employee of Mississippi, Mr. Grimes. Yeah, we'll see. Good luck, boys. I think that the Vegas, they're made of gold for a reason, and they put a very tight spread on that game. And of course, they get it wrong every now and then. But in those big primetime games, you're normally pretty spot on. And so I think they did a good job of enticing people maybe to lean Georgia's way, get on that Georgia side of the points this week. But guys, all three of you, big games this week. Best of luck. Thank you for taking the time to join me here, talking a little bit about all these other games. I know we had to cover the big ones like Oklahoma, Missouri. But those games matter big time. So best of luck to your teams as we chase playoff implications. It's going to be a big weekend. So I will be rooting for chaos. Joy, I can honestly say go Tigers. Coach John, I hope y'all have good food all day Saturday, whatever y'all do. I hope y'all have a blast up until about 6:30. But thanks for being here, guys. Any last words before we get you out of here?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Go Dogs.
Yeah, go Dogs. Like, subscribe. Y'all who are in the chat, come back for the betting show that Ghost is about to run back. This man works hard, so y'all help him out.
Yeah, 8:30, might get started a little later. Me and Brandy will be covering week 11, our college football play. Somebody on the channel had a sweep for the first time last week, going 4-0. So I'm definitely excited to recap that. Guys, thanks for being here. Throw a like on the video.